This is Horsburgh Castle, and I'm going to drag it kicking and screaming into the world of 40k. I wasn't going to schlep up there with a tape measure, so my research needed to start on the internet, and I found exactly what I needed. From this snippet of information, I was able to build a small test model out of leftover foam core. The proportions all looked good, so it was time to figure out how to turn this into some playable terrain. I knew I was definitely going to be needing bricks. I started with 2 by 1 by 1 centimeters, and then taking those measurements, scaling them up or down, but retaining one of the dimensions always being 1 centimeter, so I knew all the bricks would fit together. While I add some texture to these bricks, here's a brief history of Horsburgh Castle. Stop! It's in Scotland. Carry on. The Horsburgh family is first recorded at 1230. That's AD, not AM. In the 1540s, John Horsburgh rebuilt the castle, and it served as many in a line of signal towers along the River Tweed. These are the ruins that we see today. In 1706, the Scottish Parliament, made up of clergy, nobles and appointed commissioners, passed the Act of the Union, and the Parliament was dissolved on May the 1st, 1707.
I'll make this declaration. We're bought and sold for English gold. Such a parcel of rogues in a nation.
One of those commissioners was Alexander Horsburgh, who a year later was appointed the acting sheriff of Peeblesshire. By 1785, the land and castles hadn't been in the family for years and came up for auction. Alexander's grandson, also called Alexander, missed a chance to reclaim the lands by forgetting what day the auction took place. In 1852, the last member of the hereditary family died without an heir. After a thorough shuffle, all the sharp edges and the bricks are now rounded, and there's plenty of good stone texture in there too. And while we've been doing that, I've had my printer running, sorting out some windows and doors. I made plenty of bricks so I can make a couple of test pieces. The first was just gluing bricks together, using some Gorilla wood glue. The bonding of the glue was great, but the wall just felt a little bit too flexible for my liking. I decided to try using some card to the centre of the walls to make them much more rigid. This method, with some wood glue, was the perfect way to go about it. I cut out some card templates, and after very carefully putting some slits into some of the keystone bricks, it was time to start putting this structure together. I glued some of the printed parts into the template so I could build around them, and then just started interlocking keystones. I fetched me a toothpick just to help add even more strength. Snip snip, gentlemen. Then it was just a case of gluing one brick at a time. This is where I've ended up. I've stuck it on a base for stability, and on this half of the ruin I've got a little first floor. We're going to replicate that on the other half of the ruin as well. I've also made 2 extra corners to the building, which, as far as I understand, would have been the layout of the original 1540s castle. To make the first floor, we're just going to use some foam core, but first of all we need to get the paper off. We're going to do that using a hairdryer. The heat melts the glue, allowing us to pull away the paper so we can access the foam, which allows us to add texture later. Listening to ASMR. Yeah, filthy! Now we've freed the foam from its paper prison, it's time to break out that plaster tape. This bit can be a little bit finicky is the word. The tape isn't made up of perfect squares, it moves, it bends, it changes shape. So this takes a bit of patience. But once you've got it all lined up, just flip it over, trim away all the excess. To add some texture to the underside of this floor to make it look old, to make it look like it's part of a ruin, just going to use a lighter. Be careful and be quick. If you leave your flame there too long, you'll have no foam left. But it is quick and it is effective. Now we just need the glue gun. Make sure it's on a low temperature, you don't want to melt your foam. I used the glue gun because it's quick, and now I can just get on with building the rest of the ruin. This is where I ended up, and as you can see, I've printed and added some small little details, and now it's time for some Mod Podge black paint, and I'm really not going to be shy at getting it right in all those little gaps. After that had dried, I added some modelling compound and a little bit of sand to add some different types of textures to the ground. You can see one of my previous videos on modelling compound right here, but what I need to do now is seal that sand in, so I'm going to spray it with watered down PVA glue and then some isopropyl alcohol. Everything got primed black, and now's the perfect time to show you that some of it comes apart. Then I took my wee mate out for a walk, and no, not me walloper. I picked up some local stones to help inspire the paint job. You can't quite see it on screen, but a lot of these darker stones are a really deep blue. So using my airbrush, I coated all the stonework in a deep blue, mixed with a little bit of carbon black. This will act as a base colour for all the stonework. I then had to endure the tedium of picking out lots of different bricks to add different colours to create a variation in the brickwork. I used a series of different greys, and I also added some dioxazine purple to some of those greys to keep the blue tint theme. And that left me deeply entrenched in the ugly paint job bunker. But every paint job is ugly until it's not. And after a moderately heavy dry brush with a mid-tone grey, it was starting to come together. Then it was time for the easiest part of painting any terrain. That was slapping some wash all over every single square inch of the stonework. Then, after another round of dry brushing, I could start focusing on some of the details, picking out the metallics like window frames and doors. Then I could slap the earth with some flat brown. Once this had dried, I covered it with Army Painter's dark wash, gave it a dry brush with the same flat brown. Then I had a few details that I wanted to pick out, a little bit of flocking to do, and these ruins turned out like this.